also other references like Wikipedia. But besides that, let's go on to the video. Firstly, I'm going to talk a bit about color theory itself. Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, 1490. So we can see that the general principles of color theory were evident in the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci back in the 1400s. But what about the actual color wheel? 16th and 17th century Sir Isaac Newton presented a color circle in his book Optics. So, the renowned mathematician Sir Isaac Newton had invented the first color wheel through his experiments with light. is one secondary color. The first one that we see today is red-orange, and that is red and orange combined. Next, red-purple. Third, blue-purple. Fourth, yellow-green. a lot of us know light and dark, you know, it's more of how bright is it or how dark is something. And in color theory, we see it as white and black, and then the various shades of gray as we go darker, 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 as we go darker, darker, darker. So there is light on the left side, dark on the right, and depending on how far you want to go which way, that's the value of a color. Next, we're going to be talking about shade, and that means you're adding black to a color. So let's start with blue and move more towards black. So the further down I go, you can see that the darker it gets. It's not necessarily black yet, but you can see it is the addition of black to it. And so we end up with black at the bottom. As the next one is tint, which is adding the opposite of black. You guessed it, white. So let's start with blue again, and then we're going to move more towards the white, basically adding a bit more white with each step. So you can see that the blue, there are different tints of it because we are adding more and more white as we go downwards, and eventually we would end up with the actual white color itself. And similar to the shade, you see the addition of the white going down. Lastly, we'll look at tone. This is adding gray to the color. So we'll use the same blue, and yes, it would be very similar to the shade, but just a little bit lighter. So it's sort of between shade and tint. So as we add more gray, we end up with actual gray itself. Now, firstly, shade. It's the same as value. What do you think for tint? Value as well, because it's lightness and dark. What about tone? Do you think it's saturation? Yes, you're right. So for saturation, it's the intensity of the color, so adding gray. Now, for all three, shade, tint, and tone, there is something they have in similar, and that is they are monochromatic, meaning that there is only one hue technically, and that hue is the blue. And they're adding a shade or a tint or a tone to the blue. Monochromatic is actually the first color scheme that we would talk about today. Color schemes. If you have any kind of question on what colors to use in an artwork, or even decorating your room or dressing yourself, color schemes are really a great way to start and really helpful. So, like we talked about, monochromatic, one hue plus shade or tint or tone. Shade, tint, or tone. That color blue changes whether you add black, white, or gray. So you'll see that there are so many colors and variations of that blue. All those colors would be monochromatic with the blue. So, number 2, complementary. Looking at the color wheel, complementary colors are two colors that are opposite each analogs are colors that are side by side. You can have 3 or 2 or even 4. Any of the colors, as long as they're side by side to each other, are analogs. So it goes from 2 to 4 colors that are exactly right next to each other. And the benefits of analogous color scheme is that it has great harmony and they are pleasing to the eye. Number 5, the Triadic. Triadic is 3 colors in a triangle shape from the wheel. So there are 3 colors between the actual Triadic colors, as you can see, so evenly spaced, and they can be any of those 3 colors as long as it's in that triangular shape. Benefits are that they are very bright and dynamic, so they're extremely striking and the colors pop. So we don't want it to be too overwhelming. So make one the dominant and the other 2 as an accent. Here is our final product. The color wheel and our 5 color schemes. Thank you for watching. Make sure you use these color schemes as a base and extend them and explore them further by using shade